We
Wonderful.
Okay, perfect. We're recording.
thank Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to all the students. It's wonderful to see so many participants joining us this afternoon. And it's my great pleasure to begin our program. It's an introduction to ALC Bridge Careers in Language. And it is my great pleasure to lead you off. I am the chair of ALC Bridge, and my name is Kathleen Diamond. And I'd like to start by giving you a little bit of the origin history of ALC Bridge. It goes back a few years, back to, I want to say late 2017, when a group of language company owners were in a retreat in a beautiful place in California, like Carmel, and going around the room and talking about what we were finding is challenging in our companies. And it became very clear from the small business owner to the large that we were having trouble finding global talent to come to work for us. And so in discussing this, well, okay, so what does one do about it? And I was kind of sitting there thinking, well, I'm kind of thinking based on my own background and career that it would be really nice to have contact and connections with the academic world to talk about how the campuses could introduce the language services industry and begin to talk to students about possible careers. Well, I guess the group thought that was pretty clever. So the next thing I know, it's tag you're it, Kathleen. It sounds like a great idea. What next? So what became next was I thought, well, if we're going to do this, we'll give it a name. We'll call it ALC Bridge, because we're going to bridge educators with employers for the benefit of you, the students. And so first thing I thought we should do is to put together a team, a committee. We are all volunteers, and this committee is made up of a nice blend and mixture of business owners and people that work for language companies in the industry, and our academic partners. There are members of the academic world on our committee. So with that, the next thing was, okay, now how do we bring this to the public? So we didn't actually create this platform until the fall of 2019. Now, no big deal, except that in the spring of 2020, there was something called COVID and everything sort of shut down. It didn't hold us back, though, because we used this sort of format to reach out to schools and to academic partners. So we were able to create this platform and bring it to you, to students on campus, as if we were just right there with you. And it's a platform. It's live, it's yours, and it works in a way that you can come into to visit and to spend time with us and to see what we have to offer, which is a fabulous array of, well, this is just some of our academic partners, just to show you what we've been up to lately. And so proud to be here at Rutgers today. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having us here. But this is what we bring to you as students, is this incredible graphic that was put together by Adam Wooten, who is one of our ALC Bridge Committee members. And you see it as being peaks and all kinds of, sort of strange, amazing things. But what's important is the variety and the excitement in the ability to think about, hiking, I guess. So you see, obviously, the obvious ones, the being an interpreter, being a translator, being a teacher. But then you get into all kinds of other things: talent vendor manager, recruiters, Q&A test engineers, developers, L10 artist designers, interpreter managers, lots of managers, schedulers, editors, transcreators, subtitlers. Solutions architect is one of my favorite. So all of these kinds of positions are available in our language services industry, and we want you students to know about them. So if you look at this career path and think about language services and the graphic that Adam has designed for us, it's two-dimensional. So you've got relative proximity. So language professionals have opportunities to move in many directions from one role to the other, related. So many related job titles are grouped near each other where possible, but without any straight lines connecting one to the next. However, such proximity is not always possible, especially for titles that can relate to so many others. This is an exciting industry that we're in. The vertical position, you've got language professionals where you have opportunities to have seniority, but it's vertical. So each title, it's kind of connected, but however, it's not, and so there's some titles can be, even inconsistent in the industry, but they're all available to you. How do you play with us? Well, you go to our job board, or you go on the website to the career website, and you'll see there that where our companies have posted jobs. And I have exciting news because we just finished our ALC summit in September in Portland, and many companies have promised that they're going to be coming on and posting more and more jobs for us. Not just jobs for interpreters, translators, but some of these other ones that we just showed you. So this is for you, and you'll have this to work with, but you can just go online and come on in. How do you get started? Well, you visit us. And for you as students, you'll want to go to the page on internships. Internships will be posted. I don't know that we have any posted just at the moment, because keep in mind, this is a live platform. So we have to play this game of hoping that students are coming to look at the exact same time when companies are posting the positions and the jobs. So this is sort of the introduction, the slideshow that I wanted to share with you. And I would like to thank you and then stop sharing my screen so we can have a conversation, and we can involve our students, and we can have a conversation with Steve and with Esther. And this afternoon, let's see, what did we decide? We decided that you were going to start, Steve?
That is correct.
Oh, good. So I will turn over the mic to you, and we're going to take questions at the end of the session. Unless you have a burning question that just needs to be answered right away, we're just here for you. So you can, of course, say, hey, Steve, I need more information. For now, I will let him take over. Steve is not only a terrific example of the opportunity in our industry, but he's a very good friend and colleague. And he almost always says yes whenever I say, Steve, are you available? And here he
almost always, I always say yes.
He always does. And so he doesn't have ALC Bridge behind him because he is in Denver, Colorado, on a very important mission working, and perhaps he'll tell you about it, but perhaps not. Maybe you'll just have to find out for yourselves. Steve.
All right, thanks very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I got some slides queued up here. So what I want to talk to you about today is just sort of following on from what we've just told, Kathleen has just told you, is just talk to you a little bit more about careers, what the industry itself looks like, and what kind of career opportunities there are, and sort of tell you a little bit based on Adam's wonderful graphic about what my own career path has been, and just sort of show you how somebody who's been around for a very long time is sort of the different hats that I've worn, and give you a sense of the opportunities that you have to really sort of create your own path. The path to, a career path in language services is not necessarily linear. There's all kinds of jumping off points, off ramps, on ramps, things where you're sort of like you're teleported sometimes from one place to another, all while you're sort of building this great career. I am very lucky to have been working in this career for the last, I'm in my 37th year, I think. Yes, and I am one of the few people. I'm very proud to be able to say that I have worked in this industry from the time I started until now. I studied Spanish going to school, and then went in to just once I graduated, I started translating. I got my degree, and then it was on from there. But I've been working steadily in this industry for 37 years. So you can make a career in it. I know a lot of people think that that's not possible, but I am here living proof to tell you that it is possible. I've been working here for 37 years. So I'm going to tell you a little bit now about the industry itself. Because not a lot of people really know about the language services industry, because we're kind of a stealth industry. We're sort of, I won't say we're in the shadows, but we're in the background, because if we're doing our jobs correctly, people don't notice, right? So, the estimated global revenue for our industry and for 2023 is $69.3 billion. And that is projected to be 90.9 billion by 2027. And just to sort of put that into a little bit of perspective for you, I was looking at some figures for a presentation I did earlier in the year, and there was some data that the BBC posted about the music industry, and the global music industry in 2021 was $26 billion. So that's something that you all are familiar with. You're familiar with music. We all listen to music. We know that that's big. There's a lot going on there, a lot of commerce going back and forth around the world. $26 billion for them. We're at 69. And that is because we're an industry that is, that touches all industries, and it touches all aspects of an enterprise, right? It's not just one thing. And that fact alone means that, any place that communication needs to happen, translation and interpreting is required, right? So that could be anything. That could be in an HR department in a company. It can be a legal department. It could be a technical docs department. It can be their marketing department. It can be their events department. There's all these different things in all different industries across all different subject fields where translators and interpreters are needed. And because we're not tied to any one sector, it is also a super resilient industry, right? I don't want to jinx us and say that we're recession-proof or crisis-proof, but we're pretty close. We're super resilient. So, when you see a lot, because all of this work needs to be happening regardless of whatever's happening in the world. So getting into the language industry, it can be a tough getting started, but it's super flexible. And gives you lots and lots of opportunity. Based on reports and surveys done by ATA, it's highly specialized translators can regularly earn six figures. So we're not talking about paupers' wages here in language services. And I think that's another thing that we don't do as an industry very well. We do not talk about the fact that you can make a career out of it and that you can actually support yourself. And that's something that's very important to know. It employs over 200,000 Americans full-time, and worldwide that's more than 1 million people. The majority of the people in our industry, the translators and interpreters in particular, are independent contractors who are working for themselves. And this is also an industry that's grown 5 to 8% a year on average, sometimes much more, since 2005, making it one of the fastest growing sectors in the economy, where others are growing much more slowly. And this here is just a quick graphic of what that growth has looked like. NIMSI and CSA research have been tracking growth in our industry for close to 20 years. And you'll see, we were back in 2009, we were at 23.5 billion. Now in 2027, they're anticipating it's going to be 90.8. If you look at the market distribution, about 39, almost 40% of the companies that are producing the services are in Europe, which is not surprising. But in North America, we've got about 37.6% of that, with Asia and the other parts of the world, having smaller and smaller numbers of companies that are producing. At the same time, those numbers are fairly close in terms of where the clients are and where that work is. So the work is being produced in, largely in Europe, in North America. Clients are coming in as requesters. 41% of that revenue, at least in 2022, was coming from North America, and about 48% of it, client requesters, were coming from Europe. So but that, in terms of what your job prospects are here in the US, those are pretty good numbers. Also, if you look at this figure from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it shows that they anticipate there will be a 24% change in employment, increase in employment for translators and interpreters, projected between 2020 and 2030. That's compared to the next closest thing, which is media and communication workers, which is 11%, and all other occupations, which is 8% during that period. So, our sector, in terms of employment in the US, is expected to grow 3 times that much, 3 times as much as all other occupations over the period to 2030, which is also very encouraging, and should be very encouraging for anybody who's looking for a career in language services. And the other thing to keep in mind when you're looking at these figures from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is that those are based on full-time positions, people that are working in-house, right? Where we know that most translators and interpreters are freelancers, right? Or independent contractors. So those numbers are actually probably much bigger. So I would say this is a pretty conservative estimate about what's going to be happening over the next 5 to 10 years in our sector. Another thing that should also be, encouraging for you as people that are looking for jobs in the sector, but less encouraging for those of us who are looking for workers, is that 1 in 3 companies in the U.S. say that they depend on, 9 out of 10 employers say that they need people with language skills. 1 in 3 of those say that they see a gap, and 1 in 4 have actually said that they have lost business because of a lack of world language skills in their businesses. So this is separate from translation or interpreting, or maybe not only translation and interpreting, but this gives you a sense of the position that you're in with people as potential employees, as people seeking jobs on the market with well-developed language skills, that there are lots and lots of businesses out there that are looking for people with those skills to help them sell their businesses. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of external forces. I mean, obviously, globalization is big. The world has become very small, right? We do business all around the world. It's very easy to do business all around the world. A lot of that has to do with technological advancement, all right? Technology is bringing us closer, and the fact that it's bringing us closer, making it easier for us to do business, it's also, creating these opportunities, and also these, we're coming across, a lot of businesses are coming across these language barriers where they're trying to sell into a new market, and can't because they don't have the support. So again, that's good for us. Also changing demographics, certainly in the US. I started working in the industry in 1987, and then I left the country in 2000 to work abroad for about 8 years. And at the time that I left, the work that we were doing in the industry was still very much focused on export, right? We were helping businesses sell their services abroad, and communicate with the world outside of the US. And every once in a while you would have, a 911 call that you would have to work with, but there was very little work that we were doing that was for consumption in the US. Now, 8 years later, when I came back in 2008, and it was a very different picture. Most of the work for the companies that I've worked with since I've been back, 80% of the work that we do is for consumption here in the US, and it's in languages of lesser diffusion, or low resource languages where there aren't necessarily the languages of immigration. And so changing demographics has made it the demand for translation and interpreting services in the US, very, very important. And the need for people to train up in languages that aren't necessarily taught in school or hadn't been taught in K-12 or in university are becoming more and more important and in demand. So in addition to changing demographics, there's also changing laws, right? So, and we do have language access mandates here in the US under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that basically says you cannot discriminate against somebody based on their background or place of national origin, among other things, and language counts among that. So any business, any organization that is getting federal funds, the government entity, all government entities, and then any other business that is getting federal funds must provide what they call meaningful language access to anybody that's trying to access their services. So for that reason, the translation and interpreting demand in the US has exploded, certainly between the time that I left and the time I came back, and even more so now. I mean, and with each passing year, the demographics change, people are coming from different countries and the language mix changes. So we always have to be on top of it to understand what the requirements are and who we're serving and how we're serving, and also making sure that we get people trained up to provide the services. So there is tons of opportunity in the industry for anybody who's coming in who has an interest. So I wanted to bring it back now to talk a little bit about this graphic. Now, I think you can see this, I mean, it's a little bit bigger now. I mean, you can see, I hope, the whole thing that Adam put together for us. And we had at one point we had this very nice graphic that was basically in a lily pond. It was a pond, and we talked about the localization, translation, localization, or the language industry ecosystem. But it wasn't able to sort of really express very well the huge variety and different possibilities that there are out there for anybody who has an interest in language. And our, very, very good colleague, Adam Wooten, who's also an instructor at the Monterey Institute of International Studies in California, who serves with us on the bridge committee that Kathleen described to you, put this graphic together for us. And I think it's amazing because it talks about the different peaks. And if you look in this lower right-hand corner, you'll see how he basically has, translations. There's, one set of things that you may have available to you if you're focusing on translation. Then you've got AV that goes off this direction and interpreting that's over here. And then it just spreads out further and further as you go back into all these layers and layers and layers. And that just shows to you the infinite possibility that we have in language services. Because a language service company like mine is like any other company. We have C-level people, we need managers, we need project managers, and sometimes it's independent of language and sometimes it's not. But you can basically pick a topic, a subject matter that you're interested in, or an area of business that you're interested in, and you can tailor a career path for yourself that will lead you where you want to go. In my particular case, I started out as a translator, and I thought, of course, and that's sort of a standard way for many of us to enter, right? We think of the language industry, translation, and we think that you're either a translator or an interpreter, and that's certainly a good place for people to start. That was my entry point, and I was doing some translation as a freelancer on the side for myself when I was living in Spain as a student. I came back to the States to then get my master's degree in from the Monterey Institute in translation and interpreting for Spanish. And I had myself all queued up to be a conference interpreter. I was going to work with the State Department. I had passed all their tests. So I had started out in this path as a translator, and then I was kind of moving over here to the interpreting thing. I was going to be a diplomatic interpreter. But then, life happens, right? And I had this great career path paved out for myself, or planned out for myself in any case, but I had a very young family. I had an infant daughter, and I had a 2-year-old son, and then my wife was like, no, you're not traveling all the time. So I had to sort of make some snap decisions, and I kind of moved from that into company management. I had an internship. I was very lucky I got an internship when I was at the Monterey Institute that turned into a 10-year job for me, a career, and I learned so much. So I went from translation. I studied interpreting, thought that was going to be my path. Sort of life happened. I was trying to figure out what I could do to sort of make a career to this and still do what I wanted to do. And I took this little path that seemed like I was diverging off of what I wanted to do, but it ultimately took me exactly where I needed to be. So I learned project management there. I learned vendor and resource management there. I learned operations management there. And so over time, I learned everything that was like sort of like just being dropped into it, learning everything from soup to nuts about the industry and about a project and how a project goes from beginning to end. And over time, I was doing the translation myself. Then I was managing teams of translators. Then I was managing teams of project managers. And to the point, and then once I left my company in California, I ultimately became a minority owner in my company that I had been hired in I started out as an intern. I left as their VP of operations and was a minority owner in that company. We sold that. Then I decided that I wanted to, I had an international career. I wanted to live internationally, and I got an opportunity to go abroad, and I went to Ireland, and I was in Ireland for 5 years, where I worked with a wonderful company there that taught me everything about working as a team and senior management, and they were focused on software localization, and so I learned about that. Then I went to a company in Spain where I was there for 5 years, and their focus was medical devices. I learned about a lot about the medical device field, and I was also overseeing a team of my own at that point. So learned a lot about team management. Come back to the US, I started to learn more about the US market and what language access is and language advocacy, and ensuring that people, limited English proficient people here in the US get the information that they need, when they need it, how they need it, so they can make important decisions for their families. And that was a whole other education for me. So at each point, I learned something new. And at each point, I was climbing these peaks and going someplace different. Sometimes it went this way, sometimes it went that way, sometimes it went up a little bit straighter and higher than I was ready for at the time. But you make these adjustments. And now, for the last year, I have been the CEO of my company. So this company that I came to in 2014, I took over as CEO last year, and that's a whole other learning experience for me. So it's never a dull moment in language services. There's always an opportunity to learn. If you're a lifelong learner like myself, and I think a lot of people are, if you're interested in sort of learning and pushing yourself, this is a terrific industry to be able to do that. There's tons of opportunity. The sky is the limit. The only limits that you have are the ones that you place on yourself. And I would only, my closing advice before I pass you on to Esther is to say to you, when you're thinking about what you want to do in language service and thinking about what you want to do with your career, don't be too rigid, because if you think that your goal is to be a diplomatic interpreter or a translator at this level, and that's what you want to do, there's a lot of opportunities that might come up along the way. Some might be distractions, but sometimes that path, that sort of detour, is actually the true path. So you need to look at those opportunities as real opportunities and evaluate them for what they are and what they can offer, and not be too rigid in your thinking. Because, I mean, look at this mountain range. There's any number of things that you could be doing, and you look there in the background and you've got AI and MT in there, and AI is going to provide all kinds of other opportunities for us. And we don't know how things are going to shift and change, from here to there. And you just have to be prepared for it, and make yourself ready and be open to what comes your way. So I hope that you will join us on this journey here in language services. It's terrific. It's been terrific to me. I love the industry, and I want you to love it too. So I hope you will. And
Thank you, Steve. I mean, awesome. Just absolutely. Yeah, there you are.
There you go.
Rail. That's great. That is so great. I know that you will share these slides with Professor Stephanie and myself, and we'll make sure the students have them too. But that was inspirational. You see, and I've known you for so long, and now I found out even more things about you.
I never shut up.
It's so I thank you so much. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce Esther Bonin. And Esther Bonin's approach and her story is completely different because she's on a different peak and a different slope at a different time, but equally as peripatetic. I think one thing you're going to figure out about us is we kind of move around quite a bit. We're high energy people, and we're always looking for the next peak, I guess is what we got to say today, right? Esther, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And I want to say, if we were to count the amount of times that Steve used the verb to learn, or
Esther, excuse me, your mic is a little low.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Yeah?
Now we can.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was starting off by saying, if we were to count the times that Steve used the verb to learn, or expressions related to learning, to being flexible and going beyond your current knowledge, I think it will be a pretty high number. And I want you to hold that, because that's key to the future of the language industry. I'm currently working for a small language company called ALC, and I'm responsible for 3 distinct service lines. I'm the Director of Language Services for Interpretation, Translation and Localization, and Language Access Consulting. So a little bit of all the things that Steve was mentioning before. I love it. But as Kathleen said, I moved around quite a bit because I really love that journey of the peaks and valleys. And last year I was here, I talked to some of you, and I started my presentation with one question. What's your superpower? And I talk a little bit about the human side of the language industry, about language access, healthcare, social justice, because that's really at the core I do. But this year, I want to start over with a different question. I want to ask you, what's your differentiator? So I want to pose this because I know at this time in your studies, you're thinking about, how do I get into the industry? It's wonderful to hear about you, Steve, and Kathleen, and Esther. You're already there. You made it. Now tell me, how do I get there, right? So on the screen, you have a word interpreters. And these are some of the basic skills that they were able to identify in that training. Many of you, if you are now translators and interpreter majors, you are familiar with this. You know, discourse analysis, visualization, abstract, meaning, decalage, reformulation, simplification. These are things that you know, you master.
We're losing your mic.
How about now?
Okay.
Yep. When you come to work for us, you're going to have to interview with people.
Losing you again, Esther. We're losing you.
Your mic.
I'm so sorry.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try this instead.
Yeah, you got it.
So, a lot of you, if you take a good look around when you're sitting in a classroom, all of you come to me with these skills, which is wonderful. You have a wealth of experience, but you're going to have to answer tough questions. What makes you different, right? So we can talk about some of the basic skills that you need. You have native fluency in several languages. You have knowledge of grammar, syntax. You have metalinguistic knowledge, sometimes knowledge of a specific terminology. And some of you may even come to me with some subject matter expertise, right? That will be wonderful. But what if I told you that this is just the basics, right? I'm thrilled to get your resume. When I see translator, interpreter major, I love those degrees. But my goal today is to give you some tools so you get prepared to get that first interview with people like Steve or me. And you have to go beyond linguistic skills. So what are those skills that you need? Time management, organizational skills, because you're going to have to keep track of assignments, duration of assignments. You're even going to have to generate invoices and track invoices, because most of the jobs that are going to be available to you to start might be freelancing jobs, okay? So you're going to have a lot of attention to detail to be up to speed with the job that you're signing up for, to be able to bill for it so you can put food on the table. And you're gonna have to show me that you're an active listener. You know where you're going, you know the requirements of the job. You're gonna have to have clear communication to talk to me about your needs. And of course, professionalism needs to be at the core of everything that you do, from the actual delivery of the service, following code of ethics and standard, to the way you're going to relate with companies like mine. But that's not enough, right? You need some business skills. And I'm tailoring these mainly for freelancers when you start, but not exclusively, okay? So a lot of you as freelancers, you're going to need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Who knows? After all, maybe you are the owner of the next company in the ALC bridge. But even when you start, you need to think, where am I getting my jobs? How am I connecting with people to get my next job? So you have to have some sort of vision. As Steve said, it doesn't need to be rigid, but you need to know a plan. Where are you heading? What do you want to do? Where are you going to get your next job, right? And what are those business skills that perhaps you don't have yet, just when you're coming out of university? How do you create your own invoice? How do you file for taxes as a freelancer? There are a lot of opportunities out there to learn about this. So go to YouTube, go to Google. There's wonderful videos on how to do this, right? And then don't forget technical skills. AI is looming ahead, right? But even right now, there's a lot of technical skills, some basics ones that you need just to operate with companies like us. We all use different platforms, whether it's for billing or delivery of services. What are those platforms? Have you ever took a minute to go into, one of those companies and look at a video on how that interpreting management platform works? And then soft skills. And I'm big on this. Remember, my previous presentation was the human side of the language industry. So I love soft skills because they are probably one of the things that is going to make you stand out from the crowd. Your ability to receive feedback and quickly incorporate it. Your ability to adjust to change. This is an industry in turmoil. It's changing, and it has been changing since its origins. It's not just the AI, right? I can tell you many stories about translators that were afraid of moving away from their typewriters when laptop computers came over. So we're changing. We've always been changing. So ability to adjust to change. Ability to present in public. As an interpreter, you're going to have to do that. But even as a freelancer, as a translator, you're going to have to negotiate with these companies. You're going to have to create your own brand and persona. So your ability to communicate your needs in a way that aligns with the companies you're working with, it's also very important. Customer service skills. We're a service industry, right? Our clients are important to us. They should be important to you too. And then the cultural humility and the competence to really move in a industry that is global, where we all come from different parts of the world, where we serve clients in different parts of the world, So that curiosity to learn and to relate to people that are different to you, that's also very important. Now, I love this, but it's not just me that says this. If you check nowadays, Deloitte is actually providing to all the new employees a full-on training on soft skills, mandatory. And they teach the new employees how to express different views, different points of views in meetings, how to present in public. They're doing it because they know that this is key to success. And it's one of the things that I look at the most when I interview. Now, how do I get started? You hear the wonderful story from Steve. I can tell you my story and I'll give you some pics of it in a minute, but you're probably itching to know how you get started, not how I got started. So, join a professional organization. Yes, it is an investment, but anything in business requires a little investment up front. Pick one and stay aligned with the others. Just look at what they're doing, okay? But pick one. Network with industry professionals. You're doing it now. Join our LinkedIn profiles. Search over what they're publishing, what they're speaking about. Stay tuned to the industry trends, which are many and changing, and events like this one. Research, and don't research just techniques about how to do your translation or your interpreting role. Research about the tools that we use in the industry. One of the challenges we have when new translators and interpreters start in the industry is that at times they don't know very well how to get moving from the different platforms that we use to provide our services. Do that leg work ahead of time. Use social media. If your mother used to nag you, don't use social media, get off your phone. Esther is telling you the opposite. Go to social media. Use it to your advantage. Make yourself notice, stand out, publish about the industry, express your opinion about some of the things that you're learning, and create your own branding and persona on LinkedIn or some other platform. I can tell you that I don't schedule interpreters anymore, but oftentimes I hear my team saying, I'm having a hard time finding X. And I say from the top of my mind, call X. And that X is typically somebody that is on my LinkedIn profile, that comes up on my feed, that shows their professionalism at work. And therefore, they stay in my memory. A lot of it when you start working as a freelancer is about staying at the top of that list that we call. Now, to be on top of that list, professionalism needs to be at the core. So those soft skills, those business skills, all that has to be there. And then look for internships, mentorship opportunities, volunteer opportunities. Stephanie has a wonderful program in your university, Life in Translations. You can go over and volunteer, learn firsthand the people you are serving and the challenges that come with performing our role in a context that sometimes is far from perfect. That's learning too. And then practice interviewing. You want to get a job. You want your foot at the door. Practice interviewing and make sure you're hitting some of these key points. Oh yeah, I'm a graduate of so-and-so. I have a degree. And how about your business skills, your soft skills? Have you done your research about my company? Have you done research about the tools? Even if you mention them and you're curious enough to be able to say a few points about it, that's already going to dissipate any doubt in my head that you are a complete novice, right? So I got started pretty much on a way like this. I was a student of translation and interpreting at Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona. And then I moved across different universities with grants and internships. I work a little bit everywhere. I was a tourist guide, an escort interpreter, a translator, a court interpreter, a conference interpreter, a live TV interpreter. If you look in here, this is my very early years, right at the end of my university degree. Some of these jobs, even when I was studying, you start seeing a lot the word interpreting, because that's where my passion is. So I started to head that way. But like Steve said, I had no clear path. I was not saying no to many other things because I needed the money, right? But if you look at it, you're probably wondering, well, Esther, you talked to us about, what's my differentiator? Well, what was your differentiator back then? I was like, oh, gee, I don't even know. What was my differentiator? So when I was preparing this conference, I asked one of my mentors, hey, Kevin, do you think you know what my differentiator was? And I thought I had an idea, but I thought I asked. So some of my titles were these: university professor, healthcare assistant, translation and interpreting department manager, language service company interpretation programs manager, language service company language service director. And in the middle of the bullet points, I had babysitter, waitress, shop assistant. And guess what? When I stopped and thought for a second, where did I learn the most? There are some key skills that I also learned in those other jobs. Customer service skills, oh my little Moroccan restaurant in Belfast that I used to pay for my university taught me so much about people, about keeping people happy, about understanding what people need and want, about apologizing. Babysitting really taught me that I better hustle into something else because I really didn't want to do that, right? But bottom line is there's a lot of learning in everything that you do. And that's why I said, when Steve started talking, the word learner came all over his presentation. So what is your differentiator? I'm really hoping to hear a lot of this. Growth mindset, or in other words, wanting and being curious to learn. So some of my biggest fears are not learning enough, missing opportunities to learn, not contributing enough. That's why I'm here, because I feel I want to contribute and give back to the industry that has given me so much, right? What these fears do is they make you committed to what you have on the bottom of the screen. They make you committed to learning and growing, to excel at what you do, to add value. Let's focus about you, more focus about value you bring. So when I interview, this is the #1 quality that I look for in any candidate, regardless the level of experience they bring to the table. Can you approach challenges with an open mind? Are you perseverant enough to follow through when I need you at 6 o'clock because this client has a last-minute interpretation assignment, right? Are you also interested in seeking advancement? Nothing wrong with those of you that just want to be an interpreter or just want to be a translator, but even in that there is advancement, right? What else are you going to do to improve your skill, to hone them, right? To specialize. So I value honesty and transparency. Without making mistakes, we don't learn. Don't feel you're coming to our industry having to know it all. We don't expect that from you. We don't. But what we expect is really that ability to be curious and continue to learn alongside with us. Because we mentioned AI, there's a lot of learning to be done. We're not going to be bored, right? Now, the language industry has been wonderful to me as a woman who's a mother and who has been able to stay in the industry for over 20 years. I've been able to choose my own adventure and dedicate more time for work, sometimes more time for my family. I've been anything from interpreting, training, translation, management, and who knows, Maybe my next adventure will be to climb up that peak, or maybe go to take it easy and go back to do something else. But the bottom line is the language industry is flexible, provides mobility, okay? And it allows you to choose your own adventure. So welcome to the game. And with that, I'm going to stop here and let you start with questions.
Thank you so much, Esther. Oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness me. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Stephanie, would you like to, shall we open up the screen, the mic?
Yes,
to
absolutely.
Questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll leave it up to the students now. Please ask any questions you might have for Steve or Esther or Kathleen, anyone here on the panel. Don't be shy, go ahead and ask your questions. Now's your time.
And while you're thinking, you can put things in your chat if you like. But I'll give you a couple of minutes on I explained to you how I got into being the chair of ALC Bridge, but I didn't really tell you too much about how I got myself into the industry. So while you're thinking about your questions, I'll give you a quick synopsis. I came out of the University of Florida with a master's in French literature, 16th century. François Rabelais was my man. And yes, questions? Do I have a question? Just put your hand up if you do. No. So I came out looking for my perfect job, and it just wasn't out there. I did a little bit of tutoring and some odds and ends of things, and spent some time trying to figure out what, in fact, I was going to be doing with this fabulous skill that I now had, which was critical thinking, very valuable. And over time, what I ended up doing was, if I couldn't find anybody to hire me, I would hire myself. So I went right into the entrepreneurial piece of the story of the language service industries, not wasting any time, having no clue whatsoever about business and how to create a business, how to do a business. I just knew I had to have one. And my model in those days was the only other commercial language institution, language school that I'd ever heard of. It was called Berlitz. And Berlitz was a big commercial institution, and it offered language classes in all languages in the world, and all sorts of little funny booklets and maps and things that are just so antique. They're probably in libraries somewhere, maybe, I don't know, archives most likely. And I created this company called Language Learning Enterprises, LLE. And I was in the Washington, D.C. area at the time. And I was able to figure out fairly quickly that my client would be the federal government. The federal government was buying language services, whether it was the State Department, the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, sending their foreign service officers overseas. And sure enough, I found out that, in fact, they needed my services. So I began with language instruction for the government, then moved into translation and interpretation, and ended up building a rather significant multi-million-dollar company based in Washington, D.C., with overseas services across the country here. And I sold it in 2009. And I've been consulting and working in the industry ever since. You can't leave, you see, once you're in. So that's my little story. And I'm so delighted to have been able to introduce you to Steve and to Esther. We will be available to you through your professor, through LinkedIn, however you wish to take it, Stephanie. But I just wish there was at least one question.
I agree. Anyone, there are no questions in the chat. Any questions from anyone? I actually have a question. I think it might be helpful for the students. Oh, sure, thank you.
Mike,
you can go ahead. I'll ask after you're done.
So my question is regarding, I know you mentioned certain professional organizations for students to join. If maybe you can list the ones that would be the most recommended for them at this stage in their academic career.
Absolutely. And I will send you, if I haven't already, Stephanie, I'll send you the list of internet resources.
Perfect, thank you.
I will do that. Well, there's a quite a few of them, but I would think for you starting out, if you're interested in translation, you'd want to become members of the ATA, American Translators Association. It's not an expensive investment, and you will be immediately with your peeps if you're thinking being a translator. Let's see, Steve, what would you recommend?
Well, I mean, the ATA is a great one. They have a student rate, I know. There's also some smaller organizations, AITE, if you're interested in translation and interpreting for education. AITE is a small organization that would be very useful. If you're interested in legal and judicial translation and interpreting, there's NAJIT, the National Association of Interpreters and Translators. What is that? NAJIT.
Yeah, it's judiciary. It's the judiciary interpreters. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good. There's any number of them, and then of course ATA has a lot of regional organizations, right? That so there's the national organization, but then DC has one. There's one for the Midwest. There's Northern California has one. There's you just need to sort of have a look to see which local organization, because the local ones are the ones that might be the most immediately helpful to you because you have the opportunity to interact with them in person locally. And Esther, you mentioned it in your presentation. I'm sure you have some ideas.
Yeah, the National Council on Interpreting in Healthcare, for those of you that are also thinking the interpreting side of the industry, it's a very good one. When you become a member, you actually get to access some trainings for free. They have a training section with a lot of good information, especially for those going into healthcare interpreting. I also, recommend visiting the CCHI page. That is a page where you will find information about national certification for interpreters, but it also has a lot of links to learning opportunities. So those two on the interpreting world can be very, very useful.
I guess I have to confess.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, Michael, you had a question? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No, you're perfectly fine, perfectly fine. My question could go out to all three of you guys. Maybe it's like a little dumb question, but because a lot of you guys started, I would say for a lot of people in our class, we started our language journey at home. I don't know for you guys if this is the same, but I know you guys pursued it in college and then of course went through it in the workforce. So my question to you is, because at least for me, and I know other people are the same way, once you get used to using the same set of vocabularies or the same situations, the same thing, how do you guys go through refresher courses in terms of reminding yourself, almost re-falling in love with the language, getting back into it? That's if it's a little question, just never mind. But that was kind of my thought process because I know you said you were in here for 37 years. And then the nice other lady said, she went to school in Barcelona and all that. So that's kind of what caught my mind.
Esther, why don't you start?
Yeah, Esther, you go now. Then I'll give a little bit.
I'll take it. So there's, first of all, there's not such a thing as a dumb question. A question is the beginning of a curiosity, inspiration, potentially a big learning opportunity. But I love your question, and I love it for this because as an interpreter or as a translator, you will never stop working in your language skills. Never. Right. So you need to find a way to fall in love with that language, any of the language pairs that you're working with. So how do you do that? Right now, I struggle with my son, who is perfectly bilingual in Spanish, and he doesn't want to put the time to read a book. So I said, okay, don't read a book. Watch a wonderful Netflix series, okay, and do it in a different language, right? So find ways of keeping that language alive. That could be consuming music, right? Sometimes lyrics are so hard to understand. You're going to have to do some research, some looking for vocabulary, you know, media of any sort. Sign up for newspapers all over the world. I start my day by reading newspapers in English, Spanish, Catalan, and French. I don't read it all, but it's on my phone. So I open these apps and I catch a little bit here and there. It will help you keep, you know, vocabulary alive and also expand. Of course, you're going to have to do the effort. When you find the word, you're going to have to go search for it, right? So there's effort involved, but you can find things that you like and, you know, try and consume as much as you can in that native language and native materials, all that stuff. I'm the type of person that I go to a museum and I grab all the brochures and put it on my pocketbook because I like to see how the translator did. And, you know, that never stops. I think that curiosity, you have to find a way that works for you. But all of it is good.
Thank you, Esther. I agree. There's no dumb questions. Steve, did you want to make a comment?
No, I was just I agree with everything Esther has said. I think that, you know, you like travel, if you're able to travel to back to the country where the language is spoken, that's very helpful to sort of keep it alive and keep it fresh. I mean, watching programs is a way to keep on top of new changes to the language, new slang, new vocabulary. You know, I'm an old dude now. I need to keep up with what the young kids are saying now. So it's like you watch those TV series, you get that. Or my kids were with me when I was living in Spain, and I learned a lot from them because they're perfectly bilingual now. What they were learning, I mean, I learned in a classroom, right? They learned with their peers. So yeah, you just have to find every opportunity, like Esther said, to consume the language, listening to music, watching television, traveling, whatever you can do, whatever you can afford, just do it.
Thank you, Steve. I'd rather not. I could give my story, but let's hear what Milka.
Yes. Hi, how are you guys?
Hi, how are you? You were first
Good.
on with us.
Yes. My question is more towards like the management positions. There's a lot of them, and how like to go from just, you know, starting off as an interpreter translator, because obviously I'm in college now for it, but that's actually what I do as a job. That's what I want to pursue as a career, full blown. I have 3 children of my own, so I'm juggling a lot as it is. But what is like education process of it? And then obviously, like, you know, on the field, hands-on, working, what's the process from starting off to like reaching it?
Starting off as a manager.
It's like an interpreter, translator, and then like reaching like that management position. Like with education wise, like if there's any like, you know, specific education, and then, you know, jumping in, you know, you get your promotions or whatnot. Like what is the process that you each have had, like your own experiences?
Well, I mean, I think that if it's in you, you're gonna learn it kind of in the job. In my case, I had no blueprint. I didn't know what it was to build a company, but I started paying attention. I started paying attention to things that I never even paid attention to before, like how does it work in other places where I go, and what systems and processes that work actually deliver and are consistent and persist, all these things. And kind of after a while, it sort of starts to be a part of you. And if you're working in a company, you can demonstrate to the other managers and bosses that, hey, this is what I like to do, and I want a shot at it, and speak for yourself and come in. I don't know, unless you go to a business school, which I don't know that you necessarily need to do. But Steve, what do you think?
Well, I think that my path was my internship, and I think that it sounds to me like you would be well served by exploring an internship with a company, a language service company, if you can, because you learn a lot in those internships. I learned a tremendous amount. You know, my internship turned into a job. It was a small company. I was their first employee in the end. And I know a lot. It's a great way to learn all about the industry. And I find that the best translators and interpreters that I work with are the ones who understand the process from beginning to end, not just their part, but how what they do impacts people over on this side and people up here and downstream. And so I think that, you know, if you want to get into a management position, working in a company, you can look for an internship in project management or project coordination in a company and learn the process, and that will help you. And that sort of will send you along your path towards getting one of those management positions. But I think that project management is a great place to start, because you have to learn so much. It's very fast paced. You learn the whole process from beginning to end. You see the things that you see the parts that you like, you see the parts that you don't like, you see the things that you would do differently. And you can learn a lot, and then you can bring your own skills and your own personality to bear in that, in a position like that. And like Kathleen said, you capture your dedication, you capture the attention of people in management, and that's sort of how you progress. But I think it's hard. I think that, you know, people think about going into translation and interpreting, and you automatically think that that's what you're going to do, and you're going to start out as a freelancer. I think coming out of the box, I think it's hard to do that without the other experience around it. I know a lot of people who started out working in a company, learned tons of stuff about running a business, what the whole process was, and now they're very successful freelancers because they wanted to work for themselves, they wanted to control their schedule, and they wanted to actually do the work, provide the service. But I think that background really, really helps. So either way, I think working in an internship is going to show you like the whole business, what it looks like from beginning to end, and it'll help you find the parts that you like, and then you focus on that.
It's hard. I don't know whether we're answering your question or not, Milka, but it's so much about just living it, getting in and being confident in yourself, and sounds like you are. I think you'll be fine.
I would like to add something. You don't have to wait to be curious, right? Go to the internet, research, what are the key aspects of a successful business, right? Learn about what are those key processes, and then try to think about how would those apply in the language industry, right? So there are a lot of little steps you can take today. Read an article about, what it is to run a small business, right? And as Steve said, the beauty of the language industry is that you don't need to achieve 1 to move to 2 or 3, right? You have different entry points. I do agree with Steve that a project manager position gives you a good overview of the industry. You're going to learn about profit margins. You're going to learn about scheduling. You're going to learn about talent management. So it is an option, right? But even as you start, even if you start as a freelancer, if you pay attention, as Steve said, about how your actions affect everybody else in the company, there's a lot you're going to learn about the processes, right? And then speak up. As women, we tend to sometimes, suffer from imposter syndrome and think that we can't do it, right? But continue to speak up and put your hand up and find a mentor. A mentor within your company can be a phenomenal way to shout out all your successes and get you to the next step too.
Thank you. We are over time, Stephanie. I'm very aware. Over time.
Yes, no more. Yes. If there are any more questions, please let me know. If not, I'm happy to also receive them after the fact, and I can share them with you. The students now have you as contacts, so if at any point they feel that they need to reach out, thank you for offering that. And I just really want to say a big thank you to Kathleen for organizing today, Esther and Steve for sharing your expertise and your background in the field, and your learning process, what you've done from then to now. I think it's really impressive and inspiring. So thank you. And I hope the students, I know for a fact, they certainly got something out of this today. So I look forward to hearing more from them in person. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's so great. And as I understand it, there's more to come in your course, right? I mean, this was just the
Absolutely.
introduction for the big picture, but stay tuned. Gosh, on the 18th, you've got Cara Valandia coming, and she's going to be speaking to you specifically about skills in the healthcare interpreting side. So I'm excited about that. And then, geez, moving on to November, you've got translation freelancer and business owners, and you'll hear from our Robert Sett. And then we're going to close up with Pathways to Success. So I think you've designed an amazing course. So good
Thank
luck,
you, Kathleen.
students.
You
Have a
know,
grand
I'm
time.
really excited. I'm really excited for the ones to come as well. I know we have lots of students who are interested in freelancing and also in creating their own business. And, you know, it's a lot of those questions that are the behind the scenes that's not always spoken of. So I think that would be really great to share that with them. So yes, thank you again. And if questions do come up, please email me and I'm happy to share them. I'll also share this recording once it's finished. I'll share with you, Kathleen, and then also with the students.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon.
Thanks very
Cheers.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.